Welcome, everybody, to the War and Peace Fantasy Podcast. I'm here today with Ray Estrada, Alex Rudy. I'm Alex Uwe. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Very nice.
Clearly did not take notes on what I said last time to come with more interesting stuff to give me when I asked that question.
I actually took notes. I just ignored them.
Oh, well, that's even worse then.
I thought you were supposed to ask a more interesting question than that.
You know what? I leave it up to you guys, and you guys let me down every time. I'm probably just gonna stop asking altogether. I think that's the best course of action.
Just podcast by yourself, and then you won't have to deal with us.
Yeah.
I'd still probably ask myself how I'm doing, and then stop recording right away because that would be shit. Let's go ahead. Look at us. We're already a minute in. We haven't even said the word baseball, and there's quite a few things.
Wrong. You said welcome to the War and Peace Baseball Podcast.
I think I said welcome to the War and Peace Fantasy Podcast, actually.
Yeah, no, you didn't say baseball, actually.
You're right.
You're right. Okay. Well, there is some news and headlines that you should be aware of, especially if you are in the fantasy baseball scene, which is obviously why you'd be listening to this. A few notes here. David Price is the headlining story, not this weekend, but the Monday right after this weekend. He is going to return. And this is a top 10 pitcher when he's healthy. So, what do we expect from David Price?
He was pretty shit in his rehab start. So
yeah, he hasn't been very good in rehab.
And last year's ERA was pretty high. I mean, his strikeout total was very good. It might have been an unlucky year, but I wouldn't expect ace things from him anymore. I think he can still be a pretty good 2 or 3, but I don't have super expectations. Plus, he's coming back from a forearm injury, I think, which is always troublesome and worrying, and rarely just goes away. So I wouldn't expect special things, but he could be a good buy low or add candidate, and take a flyer on him for sure.
Yeah, I think you want to wait and see if he's, like I said, he's not going to be a world beater like he has been in the past. He could be a very solid pitcher, but I think you want to wait and see if you are thinking about buying him or if he's available in your league. Maybe hold off until you see some good starts, because remember he had basically no spring training because of his injury, which was forearm / elbow, not Tommy John, I don't know. And then had 2 mediocre rehab starts. I think it was 2. It was very little anyways. So yeah, I'd wait and see if you are thinking about adding him.
Well, yeah, so a couple things. You guys talk about rehab starts like the performance means something, and they really don't. It's just about
no, it does mean something, but you always like to see him do.
I don't think they're meaningless. I mean, I think it still matters if they do that.
It's more reassuring if they're good. How about that?
I think the thing to look at would be the velocity numbers, obviously, because forearm normally leads to more serious injuries, or it indicates something more serious. So I think, waiting to see a few good starts from David Price is a luxury a lot of people don't have. So I think the velocity is the key indicator here. I think when he's healthy, he's going to be a very effective pitcher. Still really high strikeout guy. Got a little bit unlucky last year at the ERA. But, I think I can't grant him the golden seal of health, obviously, but I think when healthy, especially considering a lot of pitchers that have gone down already this year, he's definitely in the conversation for top 10, top 15 at the very least. I'm going to throw an interesting question at you here. Would you rather own David Price or Masahiro Tanaka?
Is it keeper or single season?
Just for this season.
Probably just Tanaka, because Price hasn't proven anything this year, and it's not like he was better than Tanaka last year. So I would go with Tanaka personally, but I think that is an interesting question for sure, because if Tanaka throws another poor start or another couple more, you have to really question, is he still a top 20, 15 level pitcher anymore?
Yeah, and is it just me, or does it seem like we've tossed a lot of the health concerns we had about Tanaka just straight out the window so far?
Well, it's been 2 or 3 years now since he actually had that tear in his UCL, and so clearly it doesn't bother him enough to really impede him long term.
Yeah, but it seems like a time bomb.
Every year it seems that there's some question with it. We haven't had that this year, but
I mean, apparently, if you rehab it, you can supposedly manage it well enough. But I do agree, it doesn't. It seems inevitable that it would blow up in his face. But so far, it hasn't been much of a worry, surprisingly. But there's no doubt that he was a different pitcher before that injury. Because I remember when he first came into the league, he just was electrifying at a different level that he's never matched since that injury.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd still take Tanaka at this point also, mostly because I don't trust David Price's health at all. I wouldn't be super shocked if he made, 1 or 2.5 starts and then had to exit with some other kind of setback or some new development there, because that just seems to be how these things normally go. I don't know, it doesn't seem like a very open shut case to me, but I will say that Tanaka was concerning the last 2 starts, to say the least, and that's kind of been his MO, is he's really lights out for stretches, but then when he gets it hard. He doesn't know how to control those starts where he doesn't have his best stuff, and he lets everything get away from him. That's something that you'd have hoped a pitcher like that could rein in by now, and that's making it really hard for me to rank Tanaka, in that top tier. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, it's hard to trust Tanaka's numbers, or I guess performances. Like I said, every once in a while he'll have bad games, and he's strung the last 2 bad games together. So it's hard to make him like a top tier fantasy option if he's gonna blow up every once in a while.
Yeah, I think that's all we should talk about Masahiro Tanaka about for today. I think that's all our Yankee talk for today. Doesn't that make you sad, Rudy?
I'm elated.
I'm pretty disappointed, but I can hold off for a couple more days before we have another rant about how much we love this season and Circle Jerk. I will admit we've been pretty cold the past week and a half.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about how Brett Gardner is actually hitting for power now, but I guess that's not.
Jacoby Ellsbury got hurt.
That's true. Did he go on the DL with that amazing catch?
7-day concussion deal.
Oh man, that's not good. He did make a spectacular catch. It wasn't like a stupid Ellsbury injury, so I'm okay with that one.
The ultimate Ellsbury injury would be getting hurt on a catcher's interference.
It's gonna happen
somehow. Just
the law of probability suggests that's gonna happen. Yeah. So let's keep it in the East though for now. Let's talk about the Blue Jays, who are getting 2 big bats back for the weekend series. I believe Donaldson and Tulo are coming back Friday for the weekend series against the Rangers. That is going to be a fun, fiery matchup. Hopefully, both these teams are neither of these teams are above 500. I think the Rangers are 500 exactly, but not exactly the division leaders matchup you would think. So what are you looking at in this series other than obviously Donaldson and Tulo's return?
Let's not all speak at once.
We need
it should be really high scoring. I mean, but it's really hard to me. Both teams are red hot, so I would be really careful with your starters if you are using starters on either team in this series.
Well, let's get a little more specific. Let's talk Friday first. Yu Darvish and Marco Estrada, both of them arguably the best starters on their teams. Do you not like them in this matchup? I don't think there's anything particularly negative for either side when I really look at it.
That's Saturday's matchup, but as far as Estrada goes, yeah. As far as yeah, let me just get it quick. It will be Griffin versus Bolsinger on.
That
on
that
Friday.
Match is gonna be a massacre.
Yeah, invest in hitters in that one.
If you're on the AJ Griffin train so far, I think it's time to get off it. He's been blowing up his past 2 starts, and this start I wouldn't expect him to fare much better.
If you're on the Mike Bolsinger train, what drugs are you on? As far as Marco Estrada is concerned, I'd be a little bit wary against the red hot offense. His last couple starts in terms of runs given up haven't been all that great. Just be wary, but he is definitely the best pitcher on that team. So, but this weekend is a little tougher matchup if you're worried about him. I'm going to play him because I don't have any pitchers to sub in. So,
yeah, I mean, the Blue Jays are the interesting story here. Is they're getting 2 bats back, but this year not one of the scary offenses, and I have no problem using any pitchers against the Blue Jays because they just haven't been that good. Kendrys Morales hasn't been doing that much. You know, their hottest hitter has been Kevin Pillar, and even that, you know, that's not a guy who's going to absolutely torch you like Jose Bautista would when he's hot, or Edwin Encarnacion when he's hot. So I think
the team's heating up a lot more than you're giving them credit for.
They are heating up.
I don't think they've been great this year, but the past week and a half, the whole offense has been gelling quite well.
You're right, and I think I'm undervaluing the re-addition of Donaldson in that lineup a bit too much because, you know, he's freaking Josh Donaldson. Donger Donaldson. I think that's his name, right? I think you can get a little bit of luck out of this weekend matchup, just, you know, in the case of like a fresh off the DL guy who maybe won't have the same kind of you know, rhythm at the plate as he would when he's, you know, been healthy for a while. But I think in this series, I'm not worried about you, Darvish. I'm not worried about Estrada, but the rest of the matchups, you know, absolutely.
I'm not worried about Estrada either necessarily. Just be wary. Don't be surprised if Estrada gets rocked.
I'm not going to be that wary because he's a guy that, you know, there's some really good left-handed hitters in that Rangers lineup, but there's some left-handed hitters that strike out a lot.
Yeah.
Talk about guys like Gallo and Mazzara and Odor, who are supposed to crush right-handed pitching, but Estrada's a guy who can limit the damage.
He's got that changeup.
Well. He can neutralize lefties very well, and I think that bodes well for him.
This changeup is nasty.
Yeah, and I think still one of the more underrated pitchers in the league. So I'm definitely looking at that Saturday matchup for pitchers. So yeah, there's a couple other weekend matchups that we can talk about real quick. The other big one would be the Cubs at the Dodgers. That one is definitely a series where I'm looking for I'm looking at the pitchers here, mostly because they've underperformed in some circumstances, and on the Dodgers side, definitely seemed like they've been overperforming. Especially the case of Alex Wood, who is still pitching, you know, like Alex Wood was 3 years ago. So, what do you guys see in that Friday matchup? Is Arrieta versus Wood. Arrieta on the other side of the spectrum has been really bad lately. So, which one of those guys do you like in that matchup?
I like Wood. I mean, I don't really love either, but I mean, I don't think Arrieta has really shown anything that he's really in the past 2 years now that he's a guy to really be that well trusted at this point. I think unfortunately he was a little bit of a fluky guy, and he just had a couple. I guess he had 2 years now where
he had a year and a half.
A year and a half. You're right. A year and a half where he was dominant. I think, but he really is a control-heavy guy, as much as his stuff can be electrifying. And I think, unfortunately for him, that's not what it used to be, and people have kind of figured his stuff out. And he hasn't really shown any reason for me to trust him against the Dodgers. I mean, I want to say the Dodgers' offense, especially with all these injuries, is terrifying. Necessarily, it doesn't, you know, it's not going to Coors Field against the Rockies, while they're red hot. But I don't see any reason this isn't like.
Oh, I think
you can get back into his.
You cut out there a little bit, but I think we got most of that.
I think the point is, and then, you know, Wood's been red hot. I don't know if I love him. I don't know if I completely trust him still because he's Alex Wood. But I mean, I wouldn't. But if you're riding his train, I wouldn't just like take him out for the start. Like, he should be fine. I don't think he's like, you know, in danger of getting blown.
Like, this is, you know.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it's
It is what it is.
What?
It's the Cubs.
It's a scary
They're
Cubs lineup,
good,
but
there's a
here's
chance
the
that they don't
thing.
blow him apart. There's definitely a chance that he doesn't get. It's definitely. It's not like it's like I think it's pretty good odds that he has a good decent. He has a pretty decent fantasy start, honestly.
Oh no,
Here-
yeah,
here's the
I
thing.
like Wood a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's the Cubs. It's not like this is the matchup to use if you're.
It's not at all.
skeptical.
It's not a
Yeah.
great matchup, but I think it's fine.
No, but the thing that gives you hope for Woods in this matchup is that 1 or 2 starts ago, he was going into Coors Field against a pretty hot Rockies team, and you thought, okay, this is where it was going to come back down to earth, and he threw a brilliant game. I don't know the line off the top of my head, but Wood has been, I mean, you look at some of the starts, and it's not as big as a fluke as you would think Alex Wood at 5-0 would be.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say right now a little more definitively. I think this is the game to watch for Alex Wood. I think if he has a great start against the Cubs lineup, it's a game that everybody's going to be aware of, everybody's going to know about. That's the time to absolutely sell him. It's going to be his peak value. I don't think you can get any better than that if he throws 8 scoreless innings against the Cubs or some crazy stuff like that.
True.
But if he has a down outing against the Cubs, I also think he's a great buy low guy because, again, everybody's going to be watching the game. Everybody knows it's fluky. If he does give up 5 or 6 runs in 4 innings or something, I think there's still value to be had from Wood just based on the way the Dodgers have been running that rotation. There's a lot of uncertainty, but Wood's been one of the better pitchers. I don't see why they would just immediately swap him out of that role. I think if he has a poor outing, you should absolutely try to buy low on him. I think that's, it could really go either way depending on how the start goes, but definitely watch Alex Wood. Jake Arrieta is not a Cy Young Award winner this year. That's all I'm going to say about that. I think he's still a top 20 pitcher. I think he's, serviceable in that role.
Oh,
but
I
he's
don't
not.
think he's a top 20 pitcher.
You think he's already that far removed? I don't see why he can't have, like a 3 ERA the rest of the season with strikeouts.
Why is that top 20?
A 3 ERA that provides strikeouts? I mean, he's definitely
had 2 months of terrible production. That doesn't make up for it. That's not good enough to I think make up for that poor of a season so far. If that was his whole year, maybe, but he's been unplayable in fantasy so far. You can't.
I'm talking about
justify
going forward.
it.
I'm not saying he's gonna.
You think he's top 20 going forward or top 20
going
for the
forward?
year?
Going forward.
Okay, I misunderstood what you said.
That's always what I'm talking about. I don't care what happened in the past, other than to look at what that means for that player going forward.
I think that's part of his value, though, is what he did this year before. I mean, you can't just reboot the year for him.
No, and this is
necessarily either.
Really pessimistic because this is supposed to be, essentially the ace of that staff, and you're really not getting that this year. You really didn't get that a lot for part of last year.
He's not signed long term, is he?
No, he's not.
No, this is contract year, isn't it?
Terrible. He should fire his agent because he definitely should have.
I think it's Scott Boras.
I think they were trying to lock him up, but it just didn't make a lot of sense.
I think he wanted way more.
Yes.
It didn't make sense for the Cubs.
He wanted way more, but then he had his mediocre back half of last year, and the Cubs were like, yeah, we're not going to give you what you want.
You know what? I don't even know how much money he'll lose because free agent pitching is an incredible commodity, and you just never know who's crazy enough to give him a, crazy deal. So
I think we talked about it at the beginning of the year, though, is that this year's free agent starters pool is not very good. I think Arrieta has that list. That helps him. Yeah, we talked about how it's going to help him.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think
quick note on Alex Wood to just kind of give it of how hot he is. Since giving up 4 earned runs at home against the Giants, still in a win on May 2nd, he has not given up a run since then.
Wow, that's since May 2nd. That's all month.
Yeah, it's the last 3 starts. He has not he went 5 scoreless against the Pirates with 11 strikeouts at home. 6 scoreless. That was only 2 hits with the Pirates. 6 scoreless at Coors Field with 10 strikeouts, 5 hits. And his last start on May 19th, 7 1/3 scoreless, only 4 strikeouts, with 6 hits against the Miami Marlins. So he is not only doing well this year, he is on a tear so far. He is on a tear lately. So
Kershaw,
reason.
Right? Like, who's that guy? Yeah, I was just to say about Arrieta that everybody's talking about the velocity's down. The velocity's down. He doesn't have the same command. He doesn't have the velocity. He's done. I think pitchers do go through stretches like this. I think as you get older, velocity does go down, but it doesn't mean he's done. He's still one of the elite pitchers in terms of just his secondary pitches. I think he can rein in command better than most. When he does have it going, and that's going to provide a lot of value. I think people are overreacting to Arrieta so far.
Fight me.
I will fight you. I'm
on Rudy's side.
All right. I think we should talk about one or two more matchups here because we're going on a roll with the pitcher matchups for the weekend. The interleague matchup that you should be watching is the Angels at the Marlins. Neither of those teams are particularly scary offensively, except for Mike Trout, of course.
Well, Stanton is pretty scary.
He's scary, but he's not scary good. Like, he's just scary.
I think he's pretty fucking good, but
he is really good, but he's not Mike Trout good, and he's not enough to make your whole lineup dynamic. So that's what I mean. And also, Christian Yelich has been day to day the last few days with some sort of hip thing, so he might even be questionable for the weekend. So I do like the Angels pitching matchup this weekend a bit more than most. I like J.C. Ramirez a lot on Saturday. You got like Jesse Chavez going. I never use guys like that, even though I guess he's okay. I like Shoemaker on Sunday as well. I think these are some good matchups because why not? The Angels pitching can take advantage of interleague play. I think I think in most cases you could look at American League pitchers and say I really like that interleague matchup because they only have to face 8 hitters essentially. So, yeah, that's my take on the Angels Marlins for the weekend. Anything else to add?
I'm very indifferent to that series. There'll probably be some good highlights.
Where's Farbode? We need Farbode's take. I guess he's not here. He won't chime in. How dare you?
Honestly, I don't know if two teams just make me like just kill my soul more than those two teams.
I just
despise both of them.
Well, that was a really depressing note to end that little section on.
You're welcome.
Yeah, of course, anytime. I don't know why I said that. Let's go ahead and talk about something completely different now. I think that's enough of the pitcher matchups for the weekend. Clearly, we don't have enough information on those to really definitively lock in our picks for the weekend. But what we can do is talk about some buy low opportunities for your fantasy team going forward this year. Those are always fun, right? Because we can talk about some really good players who are bound to turn around. We can start off with one of the premier hitters in all of the game that's not really hitting that well right now, and that's Edwin Encarnacion, who is off to a slow start power-wise, but, he's still hitting in the middle of the Indians lineup. He's not, in any real danger here, but I think people, especially considering how well many other first basemen have performed, people are kind of looking at Encarnacion like he's definitely not the guy he used to be. He's not they don't see him as a 35, 40 home run guy anymore. But I think he's still got some of that in the tank, don't you?
Definitely. Encarnacion, I think he's still a top tier power guy. It's just that he's not playing in Toronto anymore. that leads to a lot of the home runs, but he's still got plenty of power. And I mean, I think we see this time and again that guys who are on new teams hitting in new ballparks, they don't put up the power numbers you expect them to hit, but he has been awful. He's not Todd Frazier bad.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Encarnacion is like a very, very good buy low candidate, and he just does not get he's just not given like that credit or patience. He never really has been because he's always been he's out of nowhere player, and I think the power and the production is still there. It's a good team with plenty of run scoring RBI opportunities, and His average is low, but I mean the power is like nothing to be ashamed of, and I think he'll heat up. Like you said, the adjustment period definitely matters, and the whole team is, I think, going to get a lot hotter. And once that happens, I think he'll be a lot better.
Yeah, and I think just his profile, the way he has been in his career, he's a guy who can just go off for a month and hit 15 homers in a month. Like, that's how crazy his power is. So I definitely want to be holding on to that when and if it does happen. And I don't think he's
he definitely is days. Like stuck in a slump though. I mean, his ISO is way down, his slugging is way down. He's striking out more than usual, and his BABIP is like 40 points above his average. So I mean, there is a chance he's just not as good as he used to be, but I think he's proven himself worthy of a leash for now.
Yeah, that would be a very concerningly fast decline if he's already just, done.
Yeah.
I think we like EE for the most part, though. Let's talk about a few more.
We like the parrot.
We do love the parrot. We need to see more of him, I think. That's what we all want. That's what we demand from him. Let's talk about a couple more players here. Let's talk about Rougned Odor, who was all the rage for the first, 2 weeks of the season, and in the World Baseball Classic even, but so far this season as a whole, really done nothing impressive. He's obviously an incredibly young player with a lot of talent, really high upside. How much patience can we have for that, though? He was a guy who last year was really outperforming his peripherals. Do you think that there is any serious problems with Odor, or do you think he is just, your poster boy for a buy low candidate?
I call him a good buy low candidate now because, I mean, his numbers, like when you compare like Encarnacion, his numbers this year aren't too much worse. Or, I mean, like his power numbers at least, like homers and RBIs, but not all that concerned as of now. But it definitely get more concerning if he continues to struggle throughout this year than last year's real surge looks a little more suspicious. But buy low, definitely. I'll endorse that.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, but you don't have that excitement about it. You don't have that I believe in Rougned Odor. It doesn't sound like that, and it's not super reassuring because I don't feel
not as much
way.
as Encarnacion.
Well, they're completely different players. One's a guy at the tail end of his career. This guy is, all the upside in the world. But I don't like Odor as much as most people do because it's just not a reliable skill set to me. He is definitely in a sense selling out for more power, and that's kind of what he's been doing the last couple years even, and doing it successfully, mind you, but I don't think it's a sustainable path unless you're able to make more adjustments as you grow, because he just hasn't yet. And I'm not saying he can't, but I don't see any signs of him, really turning it on and becoming, taking steps forward. That's all I want to see with these young guys is what are they doing to try and to even attempt to take steps forward. And that's why I like players like Christian Yelich, who, they have their profile. They know what they can do well, and they work on that, and they also try to work on improving other aspects of their game, trying to add to their game. I don't know if Odor is quite at that level yet. He's not. I'm not giving up on a guy like this. He's so young and talented that you can't give up on Odor. Nobody's dropping Rougned Odor, but
he's been really poor this year.
Yeah.
I mean, this has to be emphasized. I mean, looking especially at the advanced stats, as I always tend to just add it on your guys' commentary, I mean, nothing points to him being unlucky at all. And if anything, it just points to him playing like shit and not adjusting at all. Like you just said, Rui, the only thing that's anywhere out of range of his career averages is infield fly ball percentage, which is way higher. So he's just popping up a lot and struggling in every other category, which he's just been poor. And I think
his BABIP is 234.
I mean, that's still awful, though. I mean, and his hard hit rates are pretty much in line with his career averages. So I would say one thing that worries me is that off the field, Rougned Odor is not someone that gives me a lot of confidence with his attitude and his work ethic. And I'm not trying to judge his character too much. It's not like I know this guy, but just from what you hear, the guys like that, you kind of get worried. Are they willing to put their pride aside and make the adjustments necessary to be successful, or do they get just stuck in their own head and kind of just believe that their way is best too much? That's the other thing that kind of would worry me as a fantasy. I own him, and I'm getting really frustrated at this point, to be honest. I wasted a decently high draft pick on him, and he's been really, really disappointing production-wise.
I think it's a very valid point. I mean, I've kind of noticed that too with him, that he almost has this kind of smug attitude.
100%.
So,
Words of wisdom. I think that was very well said, and I think that is something to think about. A couple more players here for buy low candidates. Kyle Seager, the forgotten Seager, as I like to call him sometimes. Really not off to any kind of start at all. He's got like 4 homers, and he's hitting around 220 or something. But Kyle Seager is one of the better hitters in the game that nobody wants to talk about because his brother is so amazing, right? And he is, and his brother is amazing. But Kyle Seager has plenty to offer as well, and he is one of the more attractive guys a lot of times because he is the rare left-handed hitter that historically has done very well against left-handed pitching, and that seems reassuring. He seems to be a reliable 20-homer guy. There's a lot to like about him.
Both Seager brothers are very good at hitting lefties, but yeah, I mean, Kyle Seager, kind of go back to the character thing. Nothing really about him says he's not going to try to get better, and we haven't seen any sustained drop off, and we know what kind of talent he has. So I don't know why you don't want to buy low on him, and you can only think that, especially like in the off seasons, if he's working out with his brother, how much they actually kind of mirror each other, especially their swing styles. So you think he'd put up really good numbers, just not off to the best starts.
Yeah, his BABIP definitely demonstrates a lack of luck so far this year. His hard contact rates are a little bit down, but at the same time, so is his soft. So it just seems like his power numbers in general are very low, which is ISO also demonstrates. So I would say it's a little bit worrying in that regard that he's just doesn't seem to be hitting the ball super hard at the moment, but and he's striking out a little bit more than usual. But you can make the case that that's just also just bad luck. It's hard to nothing really stands out. His home run to fly ball rate is really low, like just way below his career average, and people don't usually just completely lose their power like that so suddenly. And the one thing that I would say is that this kind of slump where it's hard to find one exact category that the guy is struggling, except for just really driving the ball as effectively. Those usually seem to last a while, and it's already been 2 months into the season. And if that's the part of his offense that's been disappointing, he might just be down for a slow year this year. It's not out of the question, but I would take a splash on him because he's a very effective and usually solid and consistent first baseman. He's only 29 years old as well, so I would say
third baseman.
What did I say?
First baseman.
Oh, that's retarded. I apologize.
Yeah,
that would be my take on him.
Seager it does seem like a garden variety slump, if I say so myself. He's not, he's really good player, and I think a lot of people like to give up on the boring players that don't do anything particularly special, but just churn out good numbers. And I think if you're holding on to Kyle Seager going forward, those numbers are going to even out, and I think you're going to be happy with him, just like you normally are. So he falls in that category for me for sure. One last guy that I want to talk about is Jonathan Lucroy, who going into the season was widely considered the second best catcher in all of baseball, in all of fantasy baseball. I know some people like to go the Gary Sanchez route very aggressively there, but Buster Posey's still number one at the top of that list. Jonathan Lucroy has had a very down year, and it's really kind of discouraging considering catchers in general just aren't exciting players to own. They don't hit well. Again, other than Buster Posey, does Lucroy have that potential still in the tank to be, essentially the second best catcher in the second best fantasy option that you could possibly find?
Quite simply, no, he does not.
Yeah,
He's
no.
all around declined immensely in the past 2 seasons from what he was, and I think he just had too many injuries, unfortunately, and it's really hard, as we saw with Joe Mauer and many others as a catcher, to come back from injuries over and over again, considering how physically demanding that position is. And one thing I have to point out, I know this isn't necessarily a fantasy-related thing, but he went from arguably the best pitch framer in the entire league, and he was one of the biggest reasons that pitch framing became a nerdgasm stat for many sabermetric buffs, to one of by far the worst in the league. And so he's a big reason that the Texas Rangers staff, especially the bullpen, where one bad call can throw off your entire inning, has been so ineffective, and his BABIP is actually lower than his batting average, just to give a sabermetric stat to throw into his offensive struggles. He's kind of done, in my opinion, as a top option.
Yeah, and if you look at his StatCast averages, he is about a mile per hour and a half lower average against Major League average, about 86 miles an hour off the bat, with only a 10-degree launch angle. So it's and the average generated velocity, not too sure what that means, but it's negative 2.26 compared to a negative half mile an hour on the MLB average. So his numbers all around the board are not good, and nothing indicates that he's just getting unlucky.
He's grounding out 50% of that bat. That's horrible.
That's not good. And like you said, I mean, as far as catchers go, somebody's gonna own him because you need a catcher on your team. But he's not a Buster Posey, not even close to what we talked about, like Buster Posey being a legitimate fantasy option.
Yeah, and it's sad because
I don't even think he's a top 5 catcher anymore.
No, I think that's definitely
that's a very fair point.
He's arguably top 10. You can even I'm not saying I would not put him in the top 10, but you could probably make a reasonable list that doesn't have him in it, and that you could successfully make the case for. I mean, he's declined immensely, and it's really sad because as recently as 2 years ago, he was not just one of the best catchers in the league, he was one of the best players, period, in baseball. So
okay, again, I think you're saying a couple years ago. Last year he hit 24 homers and hit 290. That was last year.
His defensive skills were awful last year, though.
Okay, but we don't own him for the defense. We own him because he could hit.
I was kind of talking about him more in general, but yeah, you're correct.
So, I mean, I'm not going to go ahead and write him off completely, especially just because catcher's such a weak position. I don't think... again, you're not going to lose anything by dropping Lucroy and picking up a different hot hand catcher just because there's, nothing to lose at this point. But, again, it's just kind of sad that catcher is such a weak position that Jonathan Lucroy can't be one of those few players that can kind of rise above and be a relevant fantasy player for reasons other than just the fact that he is a catcher. So that's a little bit saddening.
The thing about catchers is that it's a spot you have to fill on your fantasy team, and catcher is historically a weak hitting position, which is all that fantasy focuses on. So the fact that you really only get a handful of consistently hitting catchers makes it a really thin fantasy position.
Yeah. Speaking of pitch framers, by the way, how about Tyler Flowers hitting 344 for the Braves with 2 homers, 14 RBI, and a 908 OPS so far?
He's been a beast ever since he signed there.
Talk about your hot hand catcher pickups right there. Yeah, so I think that's all the buy low candidates we're going to talk about for today. And of course, the original buy low. Happy late birthday to Bartolo Colon at the ripe old age of 44. The ripe young age, excuse me. He's still going. He's still going at it. I think he is, I have no idea. If you give me the over-under on more years he plays, how many more years he plays? 2 years. Give me the over-under.
Can I take a push?
No. Okay, I guess that
I'm going under personally.
That was a stupid number to pick. I
think people are kind of over
1.5 year.
Yeah,
I'll take over on the 1.5.
I'm gonna take under.
I'm gonna take over because I love this guy and I'm optimistic. And I think 3 years ago, if you asked the over/under on 1.5, the same answer would have been the case. But just look at him now.
I think he's gonna retire before then.
He's in his prime. He's in his prime. God damn it. Okay.
He won a Cy Young like a decade ago. He's definitely not in his prime.
He is in his prime. It was only a decade ago.
Bartolo never left his prime.
You were only 9 years old when his prime began, and now he's in the thick of it still. All right. And that's enough about that. So thanks for joining us on this fantasy baseball podcast. Of course, we'd absolutely love to get some questions to answer on this podcast. We'll answer any questions we get. You can ask those on Twitter at WPB_podcast. You can also email us, warandpeacebaseball@gmail.com, or you could comment and just leave your questions anywhere that you could possibly think, and we will answer them.
On Facebook.
Facebook as well. That's a great place to do that. Check out our Facebook page. Links are all down below. Link for our website's also down below. You should check that out. And also like to remind you that this podcast is on iTunes and YouTube. So, yeah, thanks again. As always, silence. I should have directed.
You didn't really call anyone out.
I didn't call you guys out. We really need Farbode for this to work well, I guess. Disappointing outro. Let's just all say it on 3. How about that? 1, 2, 3. Peace.